In the silence after war, heaven still shone, but not all who dwelled there felt its warmth. Samael, heaven's executioner, stood between radiance and ruin, his wings dimmed by the weight of every soul he had ended. For even divine obedience, carried too long, can become its own exile. The eons stretched like empty corridors. Angels sang, worlds spun, and mankind learned both love and sin. Yet Samael walked alone, where heaven's light fades into the borders of time. His flame had grown cold, not quenched, but quiet. For he had begun to see what few dared to behold. Even perfection casts a shadow, and he was that shadow. He remembered his first command, to purge corruption before it reached the throne. He remembered the countless beings who trembled before his sword of fire, and the look in their eyes when they understood. His mercy was swiftness, his comfort finality. But now, as he looked upon the world, he saw hearts begging not for death, but for redemption. He saw men who stumbled yet prayed, who sinned yet wept. And for the first time in eternity, Samael wondered if the sword he bore still served God, or only served law. The Almighty spoke not. For God's silence is not absence, it is invitation. So Samael descended once more, unseen by angels, unrecognized by men. He walked through kingdoms and deserts, through temples and battlefields. He saw prophets rise and kings fall, saw the chosen lose their way and the forgotten find it. And somewhere within those mortal eyes, he began to glimpse something that heaven could not contain, the fragile, blazing mystery of choice. But heaven does not forget its laws. When the archangels learned that Samael had gone among mortals, not as judge but as witness, whispers began to stir. Michael called it concern. Gabriel called it sorrow. But Raphael, the healer, said softly, "Even fire must one day rest." Still, heaven sent no command. Perhaps because even the Almighty wished to see what his executioner would become when faced not with sin, but with mercy. And then came the day that would define his name for all ages. It was Egypt. The cries of the enslaved had reached heaven's ears, and judgment had been spoken. The firstborn of Egypt would perish. The angel sent to carry out that decree, it was said, bore the mark of fire. Many called him the angel of death. But those who saw him closely spoke of something else, sorrow. Samael moved through the land like wind through reeds, unseen yet felt. He did not hate. He did not rejoice. He was the boundary between breath and silence. And yet, as he passed through each doorway, he whispered a prayer no one would ever hear. May mercy remember you. And in that whisper, something broke. The sword trembled. The fire dimmed. And Samael knew, the blade that once obeyed heaven now ached to understand it. He returned to the throne in silence. But heaven had changed, or perhaps he had. The light felt colder now, the choirs more distant. The archangels looked upon him not as brother, but as question. What have you learned, executioner? Michael asked. And Samael answered, that judgment without compassion is not divine. It is despair. The halls trembled. For though his words were not rebellion, they carried the weight of one who had seen the other side of obedience. For this he was not cast out, but he was set apart. No longer the sword of heaven, no longer the flame of wrath. He was given freedom, the most mysterious punishment of all. To walk between realms, unseen by angels, feared by demons, and remembered by men as both destroyer and deliverer. Some say he fell. Others say he was sent. But Samael himself no longer cared for definitions. He had seen the heart of heaven and the wound of creation, and he understood both beat to the same rhythm. Ages later, when prophets spoke of angels in dreams, some would glimpse him, a figure of fire and sorrow, standing at the horizon where dawn meets night. They called him many names: Death, Serpent, Punisher, Guardian of the Gate. But the wise said this, Every soul meets Samael not when it dies, but when it learns the cost of truth. Even now, in unseen realms, he watches. Not as judge, but as witness. Not as fallen, but fulfilled in mystery. For God's justice and God's mercy are not enemies. They are reflections in the same flame. And Samael, heaven's darkest creation, burns still within that paradox. The light of wrath, tempered by love. Maybe that is why the story of Samael endures, because within us all lies that same divine contradiction. The part that obeys and the part that questions. And perhaps, when the fire within us finally learns compassion, we too become a little more like the angel who remembered shadow.